Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Parenting During the Pandemic, what I'm calling Phase 3, Out of Hiding, that I addressed last Tuesday. I'm your host, Craig Nippenberg from Denver, Colorado. It's the clearest skies in the world today. And when I stepped out of the house this morning, there was frost on the green grass. Just spectacular. I hope the weather's, wherever you're listening from, is just equally as spectacular. Today's program is a tribute to mothers. I'm going to be calling you the Corona Mothers Generation. You're the COVID-19 parents, the COVID-19 moms. And we're going to talk a little bit about the female brain and how that allows you to be the incredible mothers that you are. And on Father's Day that week, I'll be looking at talking about the male brain and what happens in males' brains to make them fabulous fathers. First of all, I want to thank Dr. Langley for being on Thursday. He did an amazing cast about how he and his wife sort of evaluate their children on a semi-regular basis. And what's so great about it is he just makes it all sound like a normal parent. He doesn't sound like some psychologist with some fancy plan that they diligently follow. It's pretty much on the fly. And with 5 boys, their lives are on the fly. And I always like how they talk about their just evening time having scotch by the fireplace where they can talk about the children and what their needs are and how to support them. A couple other things I wanted to share out of the news. I like to collect news stories. Saw one in the Post the other day about worldwide sleep and nightmares and how people around the entire world are having COVID-19 nightmares. So it's an example of a whole group of people around the world sharing in this suffering. The good news about your nightmares, and it's a good thing to tell your children, the latest brain research tells us that when you're having a nightmare, it's your brain's way of preparing yourself for how to handle a crisis. And in fact, they found that people that had more nightmares were less anxious during the daytime because their brains had been practicing what they would do compared to people who didn't have as many nightmares. So they're actually quite helpful for us. I like to tell kids, when you have a nightmare, just thank your brain for practicing and teaching you what to do. I also saw a piece in National Geographic. I'm going to read a short paragraph about Zoom fatigue from Amazon. My blue screen filter is supposed to arrive. They're talking about regular calls versus with a typical video call. It impairs these ingrained abilities to read subtle nonverbal cues. So when we communicate, some of our communication is with words that we're listening to, but much of it is through our nonverbal facial expressions, our hand gestures, our shoulder shrugs, our body posture, etc. And this, you don't get those cues, and it requires sustained attention and intense attention to words instead. If a person is framed only from the shoulders up, the possibility of viewing hand gestures or other body language is eliminated. If the video quality is poor, any hope of gleaning something from minute facial expressions is dashed. So it really pushes the brain to simply listen to words and block out its natural instinct to look at real facial expressions. So another reason as we go on, I mentioned last time, it's time to start trimming back the electronics and the screen time with your kids as you're able to, between the tele-school and trying to get back to normal in some sort of schedule for summer that's coming quickly. On that note, my wife and I participated in, or my wife did, a podcast through a group on trimming back electronics. And her phrase was great. She asked, how do you put the genie back in the bottle now that they're so used to all this? And one of the recommendations he made that I really liked was creating sacred spaces in your house that are screen free, no TV, no electronics, but having some sacred spaces. Now, I would also apply this idea of trimming back if your child, especially if you have younger ones, if they've had some regressive behaviors during this time, Saturday night snuggle parties, but has been sleeping alone and now during this time has wanted to sleep in your bed or sleep in your room. That's an example of a regressive behavior. And during the pandemic, you do what, which is sleeping in your own room. You may have to do that with a transition phase. So one way to start out is just a little heads up. They'll probably be anxious, and then you'll talk about a transition. The transition would be putting a sleeping bag at the base of your bed. So rather than, or a blanket, and a pillow, whatever you have, that way, and if they wake up in the middle of the night from their bed and want to come in or they want to be with you, they need to use the sleeping bag. So that way, there's a little distance between them and your bed, and also it doesn't wake you up, hopefully, when they come in saying, Mom, I've had a nightmare. So that could be a transition phase and use that for a while. And then we're getting back to our own beds. Also from last time, that idea of maybe having a play date with another mom and another child and practice social distancing for your younger ones. It's really about expanding your circle of trust. And by that, I mean finding other people that you can trust in terms of their day-to-day lives and being risk-free of the virus, to include others in your circle. So we've had pretty small circles here at our house, just been my wife and daughter and I. We got to expand ours a little bit this week. We had the grandkids over, which I'll talk about in a little bit, and that was delightful. And yesterday, for the first time in 6.5 weeks, I got to see my son. He stopped by for a while. He had his mask on and his gloves, and he stopped by to pick up some mail and just get to see him for a little bit, which was fabulous. He's been sheltered in place, finishing his second year of medical school, and now studying for his boards. But it was just a delight just to see him for a half hour, even though we weren't able to hug and kiss like we normally do. That Disney film, the angry guy, Inside Out is the film, but they were all grimacing with 2 thumbs down. One boy had his thumb up, one hand up, one down. And I asked him what the hand up was for, and he said, well, I get to sleep in and I can stay in my PJs all day. It's great. So he's still enjoying that part. But today, those are roommate issues. So children are feeling this pent-up kids, just the feeling of wind in the face as they're zipping along is a great way to relieve. And we're a big family, and you got tired of each other, on each other's nerves, and I would just go out again. Having been through a great deal in her own life, her fortitude is amazing. She's endured many losses, including the loss of her mother, but to get patients out of the hospital into rehab quicker so that they could make room for the corona cases. And so they've been flooded with new cases every day, and she's putting in long hours, raising 2 children, and they got a new puppy about 2 weeks ago. So you can imagine that their lives are fairly chaotic. And Elizabeth functions at Mach 1. She is zippy, and it reinforces for us, this is why you have children when you're younger, because you have a lot more energy than you do when you're older. So that's a big one. Big nod to Elizabeth. She's just an incredible mom and thinks of everything. She's just amazing. Finally, a tribute to the moms I've known here over the years at my practice. I see some incredible parents, moms and dads here, who have exceptional children. And often, in life, sometimes we like to think of simple things or in simple ways. And if a child has behavior problems, well, it must be the parents. It's the parents are at fault. And I got to tell you, 90% of the parents I've worked with over the last almost 40 years are just amazing. Some with 1, 2, 3, 4 special needs kids. I see one single mom who's got 3 boys, 2 special needs, just maintaining her house, is cheerful, does everything possible. She stretches herself so far with unlimited energy. Also, moms I've seen with chronic health conditions, accident injuries that impacted their parenting, that they still move forward. And some with mental health issues that are extremely difficult to deal with, but they keep being a parent. One mom in particular, who I saw her son, 12 years ago now, who has battled adult schizophrenia her whole life. And she continues to be this wonderful mother. And her son and her drop off chocolates for me every Christmas. They leave it at the doorstep of my office. So just seeing so much from the parents I work with. There are 3 moms in particular that have blessed me with bittersweet blessings that have just tremendous meaning to me. Two of them lost their boys. They were all 18, 19 years old, all three of them. One was passed away after a bicycling accident. Another one was from an accidental gunshot. And the third one from a car crash. That's four. And then the third one had a neurological degenerative disorder. And what struck me is on the first three, the the gratitude expressed by the mothers to me at the funeral, after the funeral, that they had the graciousness and the fortitude to thank me for how it affected their sons' lives. Just tremendous blessing. And with Bobby, the one who died from the neurological disorder, his dear sweet mother asked me to give his eulogy and was so appreciative of how I had helped him when he was younger and beginning to show signs of regression. So to those moms, I owe a particular debt and gratitude. So let's talk about the female brain, or what's the secret sauce for women that allow them to be the moms they are. I'm going to talk about two brain areas, which I deal with in my book, Wired and Connected, if you want to read more. But first, just a nod out to the female hormone system. One of the hormones that females have a lot of is oxytocin. And oxytocin is the bonding hormone that helps us bond and attach with others. And when you have a baby, your oxytocin, even adopting a baby, your oxytocin levels just shoot up, and you bond with that baby, and you're there to protect it with all your heart and might. And it brings up that old saying, "Never mess with a mama bear," and you don't want to tangle with a mama bear because they can be very protective of their offsprings. For us men, we have another neurochemical that allows us to take on those same roles of bonding with our kids and supporting and protecting them. And I will talk about that on Father's Day week. Now, for the two brain areas, the first one is the area of the brain, this frontal lobe up here, that I call the president. There's two areas, it's got two parts to it. The upper part is where our executive functions come from. So those are things like paying attention, organization, remembering to take care of things, short-term memory, time management. And those functions work at women in general are about the 75th to 80th percentile in using their executive functions. Compared to men, we're about the 50th percentile. And so women are able to sustain attention more effectively, their organization skills. It's really the sort of the root of what you might call multitasking, and all the different things that are going on in your brain and allow you to juggle and manage so many different roles that you're doing all the time. That's 75th, 80th percentile, with controlling their emotional impulses and really thinking about the potential consequences of their behaviors. I like to say, look, maybe you're upset with your physics teacher at high school, and one day you're just so mad at him, and you turn to your buddy and you say, I can't stand that guy. I think I'm going to egg his car. Now, if you tell another buddy, for a guy, if you tell your buddy you want to egg the guy's car, there's a good chance your buddy's going to say, "That's great, I'll get you the eggs." They're not thinking about the potential consequences and just join in with whatever the behavior is. So I always encourage males, if you're thinking of doing something stupid, run it by a female first. And your female classmate's probably going to say, he's really a pretty good teacher, and I think he cares about you. It's just that you talk too much in class, and he's really looking for you to participate more. And maybe if you participated in the class and didn't chit chat so much, you might get along better. That would be more of that female instinct to look at sort of what the consequences of other behaviors could be and how to find other meaning in things, which relates to the second area we'll talk about in a second. One interesting statistic, about 10 years after the Columbine High School shooting, our country really started looking for ways to protect our teens. The Safe to Call hotlines started where people could report concerns. And one of the studies looked at school shootings that were prevented in the 10 years after Columbine. And when they looked at the ones that were prevented, they found that in 90% of the cases that were prevented, it was a female student who sought out help, that reached out to a trusted adult and expressed their concerns about a classmate. And that really is a good example of that female brain at work. And as many mothers like to remind their children, it's all fun and games until someone gets hurt. They're always thinking about the consequences of that child behavior and roughhousing. So for your presidents, they are super machines. It also explains why in school settings, so much of the time, it's much harder on the male brain compared to females, as we aren't designed as much for that focused attention over so much time. The second area of the brain is I call the mirror. It's your mirror neuron system or your nonverbal processing center. It sits up here in your right hemisphere and it crosses over to the left hemisphere. Each mirror neuron has arms, an arm called an axon that can wind 3 feet long through your brain, and you have millions of them. Now, those mirror neurons, what they allow us to do is when we're looking at others, communicating with others, it allows you to pick up on all the nonverbal that's going on, all those subtle social cues, the eye looks, the eyebrows, other facial expressions, tone of voice, body position, hand movements, gestures. Female brains pick up a ton of that. So when you look at the ability of the male brain versus the female brain after puberty, and it really expands at puberty, you find that the average females are around the 76th percentile, and us guys are around the 55th percentile. The original research on this is fascinating. It's a test where you look at, the subject looks at just pictures of eyes. All you see is the eyes and the bridge of the nose and eyebrows. And you have to pick what the person's feeling. You have 4 choices of what they're feeling. And on that test, again, females score about 67th percentile, 76th percentile in accuracy of noticing what that person feels by looking at them compared to males in about the 50 to 55th percentile. Now, at puberty, those mirror neurons really explode, and they wind over to the left hemisphere and pick up all these little minute things. And for females, that area becomes twice as thick. The area of the brain between the hemispheres is called the corpus callosum. You can think of it as like a pipe running between the hemispheres. That area becomes twice as dense with mirror neurons. And it's also sped up by the female hormone of estrogen. And males have estrogen as well, but females have a lot more estrogen. And so females pick up social cues more readily, they notice more, and they do it at a much faster pace. Now, what that means is that being able to read nonverbal and integrate that with the verbal really is the root of empathy. And it's the brain's way of looking at others, listening to others, and thinking about, well, if I looked that way, or if I said those things, I would feel blank. Therefore, my friend feels blank, my husband feels blank, or in this case, my children feel this. And especially with little infants who can't talk for themselves yet, moms are just great at picking up on what that infant's child's needs are and having that special connection. They like to say, there was one joke I heard that women's intuition is nothing more than a man's transparency. Now that's humorous, but I think it really is the intuition is you have a superior nonverbal system. Your mirrors are superior, and you are able to intuit things that your kids aren't even aware of, or you're able to see the consequences coming that they're not even thinking about. And evolutionary wise, those brain changes were fundamental in our early survival, where moms were taking care of the infants, they were taking care of the toddlers, they were out collecting berries together, working together with other women, and establishing these deep, trusting bonds. And it's those 2 areas of the brain, along with your oxytocin, that really make you the mothers that you are and the mothers that you can be, even times like this. So, as we look at this generation of Corona moms, you're just doing the best you can, and you use those natural instincts your brain has to just kind of lead you by the gut and do the best job you can do for your kids and your partner and your family and also yourself. So as we celebrate Mother's Day, you've been on the lines 24/7. We know that probably 90% of the children who wake up in the middle of the night are going to call out for mom first. And they're coming to you when you're on a work call or you're zooming, and they have needs that have to be addressed immediately. And I'm not discounting any of the fathers either, and we'll cover that on Father's Day. But you really are doing an amazing job 24/7. So a special shout out to all of you, and I hope all of you can treat yourself some way on Mother's Day. For my mom, it was always just the joy of being with her kids. That was number one on her heart. But this year, you want to break it night, want to have a little private time or a special glass of wine. Some of the states are opening up now. Maybe getting your hair done. My first appointment's been pushed back to the 16th. Unfortunately, I texted my hairstylist and I told her to bring a hedge trimmer because that's what she's going to need to take care of my hair. So maybe get your hair done, nails done if your nail salons are open, but I hope you can treat yourself. And on that note, in closing, I wanted to give a shout out. If any of you live up in northern Colorado, North Denver, or Longmont, Boulder, a buddy of mine is a chef. Tim Keister is his name. And I got one of his emails. I used his catering service for my book launch party this fall. And he does some amazing things with food. It's just incredible